infinity, right? Infinity, like nothing is going to start or end. It's just a
No, you're a god that went, hey, I want to go play that video game, that Earth thing. And you went down into this tiny little person and you put on the costume and you played the character, and then you forgot who you were. I'm not that. He says I'm his brother, but my star family, as I understand it, is mainly Andromedan.
oh, very interesting. So you are saying you belong to some other star family,
I
not
do. I'm also from Andromedan galaxy. She was human, blonde hair, beautiful blonde haired woman. And she just sort of stuck her face in front of mine and she said, hello, Mahadeva. And she was gone. Alien abductions, those are
Hmm.
done by humans pretending to be ET.
Oh.
There is no such thing as an extraterrestrial abducting humans. They will never do that, ever.
All of a sudden, some thought will come to my mind. Oh, this is so simple. I can do in this way. So that thought is
Yeah.
communicating higher self or
Yes.
era,
And
right?
that's why, we talk about the muses.
Hello to my soul family. Welcome back to your own channel again. Today we have special guest. His name is Michael Dunning, but that's not his spiritual name. You're surprised, right? His spiritual name is Mahadeva. Mahadeva is a term that we use in India for Lord Shiva. And we will know from him how did he get this name, his spiritual name. And also, let me introduce you to Michael or Mahadeva. He is shamanism trainer. In this podcast, we are going to discuss about this terminology in detail. And also, he is teacher of higher dimensional spirituality. Again, we will discuss all about dimensions in this podcast. Yes, one more interesting thing about Mahadeva or Michael is he is claiming that he doesn't belong to this earth entirely. Do you know what does that mean? That means his star family is not from earth. Also in this podcast, we will get to know where is his star family. So let's welcome Michael or Mahadeva. Hello Mahadeva, how are you doing today?
I am very
Nice.
happy. Thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast. I'm privileged to be here.
Mm, nice to meet you. So how should I call you, Mahadeva or Michael?
Whichever makes you happier. I'll respond to
Okay,
both.
okay, I'll call you Mahadeva.
Thank you. I like that.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you so much. I really appreciate that you took some time for our viewers to share your knowledge. Okay, the first question for you is how did you get into spirituality?
Well, if we're going back to how I got into it, according to my mother, who's now passed away, I wasn't supposed to survive my birth. Doctors said he won't survive. I was born extremely early. And
Oh,
my mother went and prayed. She was a Christian and she prayed to God and she said, um, to ask to save me. And she said she got a message from God. And God said, only if you let me have him, he's mine. can't have him. So she said,
Ye-
okay, he's yours. And she did. She left me alone. She let me make all kinds of mistakes as a child, and she let me figure things out. And so from a very early age, I was very interested. I was a little kid, 3, 4 years old, always asking about God. Tell me about God. I want to know about God. And I went through normal, American Christian religion, did that,
mm,
and I walked away from that because for reasons many people can probably understand, and I didn't know what to believe. And I bumped into somebody who said, "I want to teach you something. I want to invite you to a class," and it was Taoism. It was a secret Taoist energy practice that I found out later was used to fight evil spirits.
oh,
So it was a martial art, but then if you went the more advanced way, you could do these forms and fight evil spirits just with your energy. And
mm,
I had been an exorcist when I was a Christian. I actually exorcised demons out of people, so I was very interested in that. And that just snowballed. As time went on, I just looked into more and more things. I went into West African drumming, and I trained with two West African shamans from the Yoruba tribe. I then got involved in Kundalini yoga, and I then later branched off into Vedic astrology and Vedic mantra. And
mm,
then I started learning my ethnic heritage from Europe, the runes and runic chanting and runic powers. And it just, I just keep getting more and more into more and more stuff as time goes on. So yeah, that's how I got started to answer your question. It's been a lifelong expansion into a lot of things.
yes, I think that is real spirituality when you are born in one religion, but you are more interested in learning about everything, not only your religion. That is real spirituality, and
Hmm.
that's what you did, right?
Yes,
Uh,
that's
so,
a way to
so
describe it.
mhm. Do you have any childhood experience? Did you feel any energy in your childhood which you were not able to get or understand? That
Oh
what
yeah,
is that? Yes,
yeah,
please.
absolutely, I did. So I told you what happened when I was born. That was, I wasn't supposed to live, and I did.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a time when I was 7 years old, and I haven't understood that until just now, like in the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 7 years old, uh, some being came to me. It wasn't physical, and I started getting these impressions that this being was trying to show me how religion was
Yeah.
backwards and mistaken. And it was
Mm-hmm.
very, I was 7 years old. It was very challenging for me. And I didn't know who to talk to about it. And I just held on to it. I didn't know what to do with it. And then around that same time, I was sleeping one night. Again, I was 7 years old. And what ended up happening was I got pulled out of my body, and my spirit went up out of my body. I went up through the atmosphere. And as I was going through Earth's atmosphere, I could hear all of the psychic chatter, everybody's problems. And I didn't like it. It was really hard to hear all that pain and all
Mm-hmm.
that chatter. And then once I was out of Earth's atmosphere, it was peaceful, and I was floating through space, and there was this light, bright light way off in the distance. And started pulling me into it, and I started getting closer and closer to this light. And then I got pulled into this light, and it was so intense. The energy was so powerful. I didn't, it frightened me. I thought it's going to destroy me. I felt like I was exploding, and I did. I exploded. And then I was just this, my 7 year old language was, I was just this big giant smile. I was so happy. And I was saying, I'm home, I'm home, I'm home. And I was a Christian at that time, so I thought of it as Jesus. Didn't say it was Jesus, didn't say any of that. It was just I was in clearly what we would call God, just surrounded by.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was saying, I'm home, and I was so happy to be back. And then very gently. I was pulled out and I was crying, no, 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 I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave. Don't take me. And then I came back into earth and I heard all of the voices
Oh,
and boom, I was back in my body. I was just a 7-year-old kid again. And so I had a few of those experiences. Um, and didn't really know, and I didn't understand them. I just filed them away. And it wasn't until the past couple of years that they all made sense. And finally, all of that makes sense. And I think I'm finally now, here I am
mm.
61. I'm finally now fully integrated in here's why I came to this earth now. And I know who I am and what I'm doing. But my entire life up until that point was just basically just getting as much spirit energy into me from all these different practices, leading me up to what I'm doing now.
So the incident that you are telling us, like, um, is that astral travel, first of all? That is called astral travel, right?
I
What you
think they
did.
would, yeah, I think they would call that an astral travel. Yeah. It was definitely an out of body experience. I didn't die, but it sounds exactly like what people say when they die and they leave their body. It was, I mean, when they talk about it, I go, yep, that's what I experienced. So I don't know, maybe I died. I don't know. If I did, nobody was there to document it. But yeah, I was definitely out of my body. I wasn't there anymore.
Are you able to sort that incident out? What was that?
Yes.
Where did you go? Where did your astral body travel? Are you aware of that right
Yeah.
now?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple of things we can circle back to what I'm going to say now very briefly, which was that experience was teaching me what I do now and
No.
one of the things I teach others, and anyway, we can come back to that. But to answer the second part of the question, I absolutely went to God, absolutely. And what I learned again later, because back then I had to figure it out. So I said it was Jesus, and I told everybody, yeah, I saw Jesus. And it wasn't until years after I left Christianity that I was like, wait a minute, nobody said I'm Jesus. It was just this huge ball of
Wow.
light and love and energy. What I've
Mm-hmm.
come to find out is that all humans are souls, not just humans, all conscious beings, whether no matter what planet they're from, whatever dimension they're from,
Yeah.
even the gods themselves can trace their energy back to that source. And that source we would call God, but it's not a person doing this, it's just pure consciousness. And if you
Mm.
go there, and if you have the desire, if you look, you will see every single soul in there. And some of them are on Earth, and some of them are on other planets, and some of them are deities. And but they all come from within God. So that's where I was, to answer
So
your
you,
question.
yes, yes, I'm getting it. So you mean doesn't matter if we are here as a human beings or if we are on other planet, if there are some other people on the other planet, but in the absolute reality, which is the highest dimension, where we see light and light only, we have our energy there. We have our energy also there, right?
Yes.
Wow. Because I read this concept before on Google, but now today you confirmed it. Because on Google there is lots of information, and that information is like dicey unless we are not getting a person who is actually confirming
Mm,
that is right.
mm.
Okay, Mahadeva, let's talk about your star family. I see something in your background. What is that?
Yes. Well, that I got that, as you can tell, that's a mantis, just a mantis being.
Hmm.
If somebody wants to go on my YouTube channel and find out if my is Thunder Wizard, just go to Thunder Wizard on YouTube and go to
Yeah.
the aliens um, folder or whatever they call that, to the section called aliens. And in there, there's a video called How I Became an Extraterrestrial. So I don't know if you've heard of this. There's something called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind Protocols, Dr. Stephen Greer. and or people call it CE5, the letter C, the letter E, the number five.
Mm.
So he's been contacted by extraterrestrials and been working with them. In fact, he works with governments to
Oh.
reveal to them
Mm.
about the truth of these beings, and so people can go look his stuff. He's got some movies that are free on YouTube. Anyway, I saw this a couple of years ago. I did not believe in aliens. I didn't believe they
Mm-hmm.
existed. I thought they're
Mm-hmm.
too far away. It's impossible to get here. All the stuff I've seen in movies, I said something about that doesn't feel right. So I just said I don't believe it. So I was watching his movie, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and he was had this very simple meditative protocol where you just simply meditate and you imagine yourself going out of your body. This goes back to what we said earlier. You go out of your body, you go out of Earth's atmosphere, and then you have to send out a mental invitation. And you say, are there any beings out here that would like to communicate with me?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you don't ask, these beings are not allowed to contact you. They have to leave you alone. So people can meditate and go through the whole universe and they won't see anybody because those beings will be like, that person isn't asking anything of me. I have to leave them alone. But if you ask, they will show up. So I saw this movie and people getting taught really powerful stuff. And, I've worked with so many spiritual masters. There isn't really a whole lot more to learn from humans. And when I want to learn, if that's real, I got to learn that. So I went and I did what I saw him doing in the movie, and I meditated, and I had like my camera and my recording devices, and sure enough, these lights showed up that were doing all kinds of weird things, and first time I didn't believe it. I talked myself out of it. And I said, I have to figure out if this is true. I did it a second time, and then I talked myself out of it. And in the second one, I had this, what I thought was a little fantasy in my head, where I went to this planet and there were these really cute little bald beings and they were very happy. And I said, do you guys want to come and visit me? And they said, we can't, you're too guarded. We can't get to you. We're going to
Sorry.
send,
So did they say you are guarded, like you're aura protector or something?
yeah, like I was too closed in myself.
Oh,
I was
okay.
I was too emotionally guarded, so
Uh-huh.
they couldn't get to me. So they said, so we're going to bring in somebody very powerful who can reach you. And I came out of that meditation. I thought, I think I made that up. And then I did it one last time. And then sure enough, this guy showed up. Now I saw him in my mind. I saw his ship, which was this red uh, electric ruby red ship, and I saw a few of those beings inside, and I'm like, what am I looking at? What is that? And the being said, we're coming. I'm your brother. I'm coming to see you. And so I'm waiting, outside, looking around for a spaceship, and I feel this energy come into the room, very powerful in my heart center, and I saw like the color red in my mind, and my heart center opened up and all of my electronic devices were going off,
Mm.
which was impossible. They were doing things that weren't possible.
Oh,
And I went,
I have read about this. If there is any other frequency within the space we are living, our electronic devices, they would not work properly.
yeah, well, specifically in CE5, you use the
Mm.
wireless remote radios.
Yes.
And the ETs know that you're doing that. So you let them know you're there and you put it down. If that starts going crazy, it means they're telling you they're there.
Yes.
And then you can usually see them in the sky or however they want to manifest. Now, this being didn't want to manifest that way. So he showed up, boom, in my room, my outside room, and I felt the energy. And if it was just that, like if I was meditating and that happened, I would have been, oh, this is interesting. But because I was using the electronic devices and I was specifically thinking of extraterrestrials and I saw that being in my mind, when my radio started making all this noise, I got really scared. I was
Mm-hmm.
so frightened because it's like, this is real. There's an insect extraterrestrial being somewhere,
Mm,
and I can't see him, and I felt somebody touching the crown chakra on my head. Boom, all of this energy, my kundalini rising, and all of this stuff. And it was, I mean, people watch the video how I became an extraterrestrial. You'll hear me on the verge of tears as
mm,
I'm almost, as my radio's going off and all these things are happening. And so he said that he was going to, in essence, he was going to initiate me into his spirituality. He was going to be my guru. And so I didn't really know what was going to happen after that. I did what we all do. I kind of went, well, that was interesting or weird. But no, every night for really up until now, but they would show up and I'd close my eyes and there would be beings in my room, all different sizes and different species. And they started working on my body and opening up these energy things. And I was having dream. I mean, it was every night. And it was very, very challenging. I thought I was losing my mind because I was experiencing, you asked about dimensions. I was experiencing other dimensions
how
and
is
communicating with beings in other dimensions, and their energy, higher dimensional energy, was being put into my body. And the way that they said it is that we're making you one of us. We're turning you into a hybrid, which meant energetically, not physically. Energetically, I'm human, but I'm also up there with them. So anyway, he was the first one, and I've since interacted with many more than I can count. Anyway, I'll go on forever if I don't stop. But if you have any more questions about that, did I answer your question?
yes, I got it. I have so many questions coming right now for you. So when you are saying you talk to other your star family from other galaxy, what was the language? How was the communication? Was it like we are talking to each other right now, or was there any other style or way of communication with other star family? Yes.
Excellent question. I talk about that in detail in my book. I have books also, michaelwilliamdenny.com. And I talk about those experiences. So they're they can, let me put it to you this way, they can put like words into your head, but it's really crude. So it's like they only do that if they don't have any other way to connect with you. They'll put a word in your head,
Oh.
or something might flash on the screen of your computer or something like that. They'll only do that in the beginning to get your attention. Once they have your attention, what they want is they want to communicate telepathically.
Hmm.
And so the interest, so we can now talk, I have to talk about other dimensions in order to understand.
Yes.
So we live in
Got
Maya
it.
illusion. It is a very specific frequency, very
Hmm.
specific, and it is closed in within itself. So we
Hmm.
have to speak verbally. That is how our dimension works.
Oh.
If somebody's very spiritual, maybe two people can telepathic. If somebody's really in love, maybe some telepathic. But for the most part, I don't know what
Hmm.
you're thinking. You don't know what I'm thinking. I have to use words. You have to use words, writing in
Hmm.
higher dimensions. So once you get above the third dimension,
Hmm.
they can communicate. They communicate telepathically. So there's a my experience with them goes even in an even more interesting different place as well.
Hmm.
So what happens with me is I will get hit with a very powerful energy that
Hmm.
isn't from, like, I'm used to it now, but the first time I felt it, my body didn't know what to do with it. It felt like a pressure, and my it felt like my heart was racing, and it was very uncomfortable. Like, what is happening to me?
Oh,
And I came to find out it is higher dimensional frequencies.
yes.
So because it's another dimension. When they're communicating, they send out their thoughts. And to come into the third dimension, it has to have a gateway. The gateway is our imagination. So what will happen is that you sometimes you'll feel energy, sometimes not, but you'll feel energy, and then your imagination will start talking to you in your own voice.
I know.
You know what
I
I'm
have
saying?
Yes, let's say I'm thinking about a problem, and from many uh, years or months or hours, I'm not able to get the solution. All of a sudden, some thought will come to my mind. Oh, this is so simple. I can do in this way. So that thought is
Yes,
communicating higher self or
yes.
era,
And
right?
that's why, we talk about the muses, the Greeks
Yeah.
talked about the muses, and we think of it now, oh, I have my intuition. Well, I'm here to
Mm-hmm.
tell you that the vast majority of the time that your intuition tells you something you didn't realize,
Yeah.
it's a spirit guide. It's a being in a higher dimension. And this is the thing is we have to participate. So this is why some people can't hear anything because they won't allow their imagination to hook up with that.
Yes.
And it's the only way it can like get into us is through our imaginations. So in terms of communicating with ETs, my experience is if I'm very, very connected, then I can just relax and I can have a two-way conversation. Of course, it's all happening
Mm.
in my imagination. If it's a concept that I'm not familiar with or I don't understand, what'll happen is my imagination will say something, I will get hit with an energy that isn't from this dimension, and it will be difficult to hear. It'll be like, wow, what was that?
Got it.
And my brain will go, I think I just made that up. And I'll try and tell myself that I didn't think that I didn't happen. And that's when I know that my third dimensional identity is fighting the higher dimensional, because higher dimensional reality will destroy our third dimensional identity, and it's death. It
Yes.
feels like death to us,
Mm.
dying to self. It's not easy. So working with these beings is not easy. There was a time in the beginning where on the one hand, I couldn't wait to talk to them because the energy was so blissful. But at the same time, I knew if they talked to me that for a day I was going to feel like I was dying.
Oh, now you raised your energy. You
Yeah.
raised your energy up to that level,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I'm continuing to do that. It's getting much
Yeah.
easier now. And
Hmm.
and what it's been over 2.5 years. This has been going on every day. It's the 2.5 years. And so I've gotten to the point now where I've made the decision that
Hmm.
I'm going to believe them, because this is the hardest part. What happens outside of the third dimension is completely unbelievable, because the truth is we are all God. And I mean that in the most literal term. And this third dimension is like a video game. We
Hmm.
have to, if you play a video game, you have to create an avatar. And
Yes.
he's the warrior or the shaman or the whatever he is, and he can do this, but he can't do that. And he has a backstory. We do that when we incarnate. We create these fictional characters which
Mm-hmm.
determine how we respond. We get angry at this, we get sad at that. And that's all it is. It's a character, but we identify with it. And when something comes along and says, you don't have to be that anymore, we feel like somebody's trying to kill us. And so we hang on to it and we refuse. I'm not gonna evolve. I refuse to be God.
Yes. Yes.
And so it becomes very challenging. So this is what I've learned from the light beings, is that we are in a huge transformation, 3D to 5D. And so what normally happens is people physically die, then they shift. They're given a time, they go to a heaven where they're able to, go, oh, wow, that was a life oh, that's not who I am. And then they awaken to who they are, and then they go to a higher level. We are doing that while staying in the body. And so it's very challenging. our third dimensional identity is fighting with a higher dimensional identity. And so that's why the world is going crazy. That's why everybody's fighting with each other. That's why people are fighting with themselves. It's very, very challenging. And so I've made the decision I'm going to believe what they tell me. And it's not easy because when you believe what these beings tell you, you have to accept that you are God. You're not a tiny little person with these horrible sins and these horrible karmas. You're not being punished. No, you're a God that went, hey, I want to go play that video game, that Earth thing. And you went down into this tiny little person and you you put on the costume and you played the character and then you forgot who you were. You know,
Yes.
little kids remember. They remember when they were in heaven and then they 6, 7, 8 years old and then they forget. They don't remember anymore.
Yeah. Why?
Well, it's because there's been enough time they've become their identity. And plus, parents are telling kids, stop fantasizing, grow up. Come on, you have to do your part, be part of society. And we send them to schools and we force them
Mm,
to believe oh, that's just a religion. Oh, that's a fantasy. Oh,
mm,
yeah, yeah, every whatever Sunday or whatever it is. Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay, now back to reality. And so they're given the message you won't be accepted if you believe the truth of who you are. And
correct.
people who do believe it, we lock them up. And there was a time we used the word shaman. I mean, there was a time, when, like if we watch like Lord of the Rings, which is what, Europe was like, a couple thousand years ago,
Yeah.
there were wizards and they were on the edge of town and people would be like, be careful of that wizard. But, if they saw somebody was like that, they would take him to the wizard and say, okay, you teach him. We
Mm,
honored we put them on the outskirts of the village. We went and gave them food and we gave them things and we knew they were very powerful. They were connected to something we weren't. We might not have understood it, but we valued it. Today, not so much right now, but 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, if you had that, they locked you up. They put you in a
yeah.
straitjacket.
Yeah. So, so you think, yeah, that was my another question. Anyways, let's talk about the dimensions first,
Okay.
because yeah, because my next question is all about the dimensions. I know we are living on third dimension, right? Earth is the third dimension. Okay. And if Earth is the third dimension, does it start with zero or does it start with the number one? There is first dimension is first and then second, then third. Or do we have other dimensions too in minus? I just want to know about
Those are
how many dimensions do we have, and what do you mean by higher dimension? How are the higher dimension different than us? And what is the highest dimension where we say so-called God lives?
those are excellent questions. So,
Thank you.
the first thing I would suggest to everybody do, because people get confused with dimensions, alternate universes, and densities. These words are thrown around and conflated. So, I would recommend that people go online and watch videos by physicists who talk about the different dimensions. And there's a few out there that'll be like, the first through the 10th dimensions explained. So,
Mm,
and just use that as a framework so that you understand. Okay, because there's a difference between an alternate universe and a different dimension. Those are two completely different things. There are
I
alternate third dimensional universes.
I was thinking same that
Yeah,
you're saying. I was thinking in the same way.
good.
Yes,
Yeah.
please. Yeah.
And sometimes in the movies, they'll show up in another universe and they'll say, we're in a different dimension. And I go, oh, that's not, it's a third dimensional alternate reality. So, so dimensions, first off, are spatial. We'll get into the other stuff later, which we need to talk about because even scientists don't know about what I'm going to tell you. But the dimensions are spatial. So we live in a third dimension where we have length, width, and height. three-dimensional spaces. We can go forward, backward, left and right, up and down.
Yeah.
So we live in a box,
Hmm.
right? Now, if you go to the fourth dimension, it
Yeah.
means that there's another direction that we can't imagine.
And what
Like
is
if
that?
there's a two-dimensional being, right?
Hmm.
He can go forwards and backwards and left and right, but he doesn't know what up or down is. So if you tell him just, he bumps into a line, which is nothing, and he stops and he can't go anywhere. You say, just go over the line. He goes, what's over? Or you go up. He goes, what's up? There's no way he can comprehend it, even though it's right there. If he could just, he'd be over the line, but he can't. So we live in a box and we know those directions, but there's another direction, which would be the fourth
Hmm.
dimension, and we can't imagine. And so some being comes along and we run into some kind of a problem or issue. And, my light being friend here says, just go flibbertigoct. And I go, I don't know what flibbertigoct is. He goes, oh, that's where you, instead of going up or down, you go flibbertigoct. I
Hmm.
don't know what that is. So he's able to appear, disappear like that because he's in a higher dimensional state. Now, what's important about that? So you get that first, you understand there's an actual spatial difference. There's some other spatial thing that they have access to that we don't. But what's even more intense is that, we know what it's like energetically, what emotions feel like here, what energy feels like here. And we know how powerful it is. So every emotion that we have, love, joy, bliss, happiness, compassion, it is going to be expanded, far more than we can imagine. What they experience emotionally is much more intense than what we experience. The other thing is that frequency is associated with dimensions. So the third dimension is a specific frequency.
Hmm.
Once we go above that frequency, you're not only in a higher frequency, you're in a higher dimension. And in that dimension, not only are you able to move around in ways we can't move physically, but the emotions are going to be much more intense, except for the negative ones. They don't go up. So every time you go up to a higher dimension, you drop a lower dimensional emotional frequency like hate, fear. Those stay in the third, second, and first dimensions.
Oh,
So let me answer your question about, how many dimensions are there? I
sorry. I just want to ask something, Mahadeva. So, like you said, those are high frequencies, we can say, right? High frequencies. So, do you mean they're having supernatural powers than a normal human beings? No?
Yeah, but for them it's normal.
Oh.
So, like for us, again, a two-dimensional being, he can only go forwards and backwards. We can show up, boom, and disappear. And all that's happening is we're just sticking our face in and out of their dimension, right? We're not doing anything. We can do that. We can go up and down. It's part of, but for him, it's magic. Boom, you appear, you disappear. I can take my fingers and put one in front of him and one in back of him. And as far as he's concerned, I'm in two places at once. He's never seen
Hmm.
anything like that. I'm
Oh.
a magical being. And it's only because I have access to another direction he doesn't have access to. That's it. And of course, my emotions are more intense than his. So if he even senses a little bit of my joy or my happiness, it's going to overwhelm him. It's going to frighten him. It's going to feel like it's tearing him apart.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. But you're saying on other dimension, like fourth and fifth, it's normal. They
Yeah,
can sense better than us. They have positive emotions, no hate, no fightings, not fighting for
exactly.
countries and
Yeah.
this and that, right?
And they're not
Okay.
bound by time because in the third dimension,
Another thing.
we are actually moving along in the fourth. So we're in the third dimension, but we move along in the fourth on time. So they can go forward in time, backward in time, be in two different places at once. And for them, it's normal. Just like, I can go up, I can go down, I can do all that. It's just part of my reality. It's not part of the two-dimensional guy's reality. So yeah, that's one of the first thing that people will notice when they
Hmm.
communicate with an ET. First
Hmm.
off, I'm only going to say this for a second because I don't want to get off track, but
Yeah, sure.
all of the things you've heard about abductions, alien abductions, those are
Hmm.
done by humans pretending to be ETs.
Oh,
Those aren't, there is no such thing as an extraterrestrial abducting humans. They will never do that, ever.
so all
I
the new,
can't overstate that. They will never do anything to harm anybody's boundaries.
yeah, that's what I was asking you. One question coming to my mind all of a sudden, when we say aliens coming from their universes to our Earth to do some experiments, we think like that. So
Right.
I think, um, should they not take permission from our governments or higher authorities to come down to Earth to do a practical on humans? It's
You
illegal.
mean
They're coming
ETs?
without our permission. EDs or aliens, right? EDs or
Yeah,
aliens.
well, alien, yeah, I use the word aliens only
Mm.
referring to humans pretending to be extraterrestrials. They wear
Oh,
costumes, they have technologies that pump things into people's brains. They do all kinds of things to make human beings, and they do abduct humans. Humans abduct humans, experiment on them. So all that
oh,
stuff does happen, but it's being done by
mm.
human, not.
Humans,
And I
humans.
could get
Okay.
into that. I won't take the time on your
No
channel.
worries, no worries. We were talking about the dimensions. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so and this has to do with dimensions as well, because when you go up, each time you go up a dimension, the level of positive emotions goes up. That's why when we experience deities, it's always blissful, right? When you experience demons, it's always horrible because they're in a lower dimension. So demons exist in the second dimension and they sometimes slip into the third, but only if we give them the negative emotions, which they use as a gateway. That's
We
how they,
invite them.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's unconscious. We unconsciously invite them in and they come in and feed off of our energy. And
Oh,
so people think, yeah, that demons come from the fourth dimension. No, fourth dimension's above ours, which means the only thing that's going to come from the fourth dimension will be more lovable, more kind. However, here's what happens. This is
mm-hmm.
what happened to me. It happens to a lot of people.
Mm.
The first time that you feel the love of a higher dimensional being, it may be frightening. And the reason it's frightening is because we know, as I said, they said, you're too guarded. We can't get to you. You're too emotionally, protected. Um, the first time when my friend showed up, the love that I felt from him literally dropped me to my knees and I started weeping. And I said, I'm not worthy. And I don't think like that. And I said, I'm not worthy of this experience. And I'm
Mm.
and I said, you have to give me a sign that I'm worthy of this. And my radio went totally crazy. He was
Oh
like,
my
"You're absolutely worthy of it."
God.
And and so what ends up happening is that they see us at the deepest level.
Mm.
At They see us in levels that we can't see in ourselves. So if we're not ready for that, it can feel very frightening, and so a lot of people will push it away and won't talk to these beings for that reason. That's why they show up and do the light show. They have their ships and they do they do that because that's the closest they can get to us and we'll accept it. And then we
Mm.
can go, oh yeah, that's a being and he's in a ship from another planet. And what we don't realize is that they're standing right next to you. They're playing around with their higher dimensional abilities doing magic. And we're going,
Mm.
oh, look at the lights. And they're standing right next to you, but you can't see them.
Wow.
And yeah, so each time you go up a dimension, that again is same thing happens. It gets even more intense and more powerful. So to
Mm.
answer your question, here's what I know. I know that beings exist on the second dimension, but they have no consciousness. They are pure negative emotions. And I think they're in fact our negative emotions that have bled down to a lower level. They have no consciousness. When I used to do exorcisms and I was taught to get the demon to give you their name. They never said, my name's Beelzebub or Frank or George. They always said, my name is anger, my name is fear, my name is lust, my name is greed. They're human emotions.
Have you
They're
ever
not,
enc-
yeah, they're
have
not
you
people.
have you ever encountered a ghost, low frequency people, low
Um,
frequency?
I Here's what I know about ghosts.
Hmm.
Ghosts, so we have, this is, since we're talking about shamanism. So shamanism teaches that we have three selves. So we have a higher self, we have our soul self, and then in our navel, we have our what's called the lower self, which is really our unconscious mind.
Yeah.
So what happens is our identity and all of our negative human emotions like fear and anger and lust and greed and resentment, those are all part of our lower self.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we live a spiritual life, we will work through all of those emotions and then we will be clean. But if you
Hmm.
die without working through it, that pops out on the earth and goes around. And
Yeah.
it'll last. And if go to a haunted house and a ghost appears and you'll say, what's your name? And the ghost says, my name is Jack Johnson. And what you're looking at is you're looking at the unresolved emotions of that person.
Okay.
But the soul of that person is gone. That soul of that
Got
person is in heaven. What you're
it.
dealing with is just his emotional. And again, it's like an AI. It acts like it has consciousness. It knows how to respond and answer questions, but it doesn't have a soul. It's not really. So, and they last for sometimes hundreds of years, and then they're absorbed back into the earth, and then they become earth spirits. So this
Hmm.
is ghosts. So when people say I do ghost hunting, it's like, well, that's like going down to, the drug addict section of, downtown and talking to somebody high on drug. Why would you do that? It's just
Hmm.
it's a toxic place.
Yes.
Ghosts are the toxic energy of the human personality that's left walking around. So that's one of the reasons why we have a responsibility to do our spiritual practices, so we clean out all of our negative energy so that when we leave, we don't leave any ugly energy walking around harming people, trying to, because what'll happen is that energy needs more negative emotions to survive, or it'll disappear and go back into the earth. So it will look for angry people, it will look for people,
With
drug
a
addicts.
low energy, low frequency. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it
So
feeds off of it, and then it talks to you and tells you, yeah, those people are out to get you, and then it fills you with negativity, and so there's
yeah.
that, people don't realize it, but again, anybody who's attacked by negative beings, it's because they asked, because there was something inside that they don't want to see, and it's
Hmm.
coming up, so they want to be distracted. So they send out a vibe, and then a spirit that's worse than them comes and says, I'll distract you, and I'll haunt you, and I'll
Hmm.
harm you, but you're going to give me all your negative energy. And they say yes. So that's
Okay.
why whenever some holy person comes along, demons
Hmm.
can't stay in the room with them. Whether they're a Christian or a Buddhist or Hindu or a Taoist, when they show up and they tell the demon you got to leave, they leave. But then what happens if the person doesn't then ask the the exorcist, who's
Hmm.
obviously a priest or priestess, if they don't say, what can I do, what do I need to do, they'll go right back to it every time.
Because they
That's
can't
why I
take the high.
stopped.
Yeah. Got it.
I stopped. I used to do exorcisms until I saw these people weren't changing their lives. They were just indulging in all that negativity, and the demons would come back. And I said, don't talk to me, talk to a therapist. That's what I started saying. Because that's
No
really
more.
what I need.
Yeah. Yeah. So lower dimension means low frequency or ghost or spirits or demons. And high dimensions means people with full of positivity. So third is like we human beings are living and we have a chance to improve. or to increase our frequency to go to higher dimension. And then we have fourth dimension where you are saying high energy people living and they have positive emotions and they can sense the emotions and they are high frequency people. What is the highest dimension and what is there at the highest dimension?
That is an excellent question. So
Yes.
I'll tell you what I know to this point.
Mm,
And this is also backed by physics, which I love. I love the fact that physics comes to the same conclusion. So my experience is that I believe that we can stay a physical being,
mm,
fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. Once you get to the ninth dimension, you no longer can have a physical body. And I'll explain the reason why.
mm,
One of the first messages I got was from my friend here. He showed up one day. I was lying in my couch right there, and he showed up, and I felt him show up, and I felt the energy. And he said, I mean, this guy was so powerful, I didn't have to close my eyes and meditate. He could just blast me with, I'd just be in my normal awake state. Anyway, he said, you are a probability. And I
mm,
responded with what I knew. And I said, yes, I know everything is possible and I can be everything. And he said, you are a probability. And he kept repeating that over and over again. So I knew that he was telling me to go and research this, meditate about this. So
mm.
again, I went to physics. And according to physics, once you get up into even the fourth dimension,
Yes.
especially up in the fifth, sixth, like that, what ends up happening is that there
Mm,
isn't one physical reality. There are probable realities, just like in, the quantum state. It's light isn't a particle or a wave. It's both and neither until you look at it and decide what you want it to be, and then it becomes that. That's a probable state. So
mm,
our probability, I'm sitting on this table, I'm talking to you, and I have my cup of tea. That is one probable reality that I have crystallized and manifested. In the third dimension, I'm only able to have one crystallized physical experience in one point in time, in one space. That's all that the third dimension will allow. You go up to the fourth dimension, that goes up. Go up to the fifth, it goes more. So not only can you do all that, but you can have multiple universes happening, and you go above that. Well, not only multiple universes, you can have multiple, and it's beyond our understanding. And you can be living 100 different lives. You can be, racing a sailboat, and then you can be playing tennis, you can be a doctor, you can be all these different things at the same time, and you can be fully engaged in each one of those things. And that's because you're living in multiple probable realities. When you get up to the ninth dimension, you're in so many probable realities that it's impossible for you to be consolidated into one form anymore. And now you're a deity. So what happens when you pray? If I say we're going to go and worship Shiva, and if we say every single person on earth at this time worship Shiva, we know that Shiva will have 100% of
mm,
his attention on that one person, even if it's an infinite number of people. And that's because he is above the ninth dimension. He that's his reality. It's not weird for him, it's not strange for him. He's just everywhere all the time with everybody. That's why he has no judgment, of the deities. Shiva will hang out with anybody, murderers and drug addicts and prostitutes. He doesn't care because
mm,
he's lived all those probabilities, and he sees that you're just one probability. He sees that other aspect of you and that aspect of you. And here's something that is just blew my mind.
mm,
When the deities took me to
mm.
their level, I saw myself in each one of those dimensions. I had
Oh,
a higher dimensional version of me come and talk to me once. That was a trip. That was very strange. And I saw that I'm in all of those dimensions. And so all that enlightenment is like, if, forgive me, I'm going to start, it's going to sound blasphemous what I'm about to say, but any one of us can become Vishnu. Any one of us can become the avatar of Vishnu right now. All we have to do is
Mm.
is tap into, expand into that version of us that is in the ninth dimension or above. At that moment, you will instantly be God on earth. And any one of us can do this if we choose. But it means we have to die to this tiny little thing that we are, and we have to expand into all of that.
Yes.
And I'll take it even further. What I've learned from the light beings
Mm.
is that if you're a human, it means that you are one of the most powerful deities in the entire multiverse,
Yes.
because only the most powerful of deities are allowed to incarnate on Earth,
Mm-hmm.
because it is such a difficult school. And we're down here and we're bumping into ourselves and we have all these horrible emotions and we've done things that, you know, we're sinful and imperfect and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we see ourselves. But what I learned from these beings is that they look at us and they're like, you're a human on earth, and they bow. They worship you. And if you just begin to wake up a little bit to your, not yours, but anybody, if anybody wakes up to their higher dimensionality, what'll happen is the gods will worship you. Shiva himself will get on his knees and bow before you if you awaken to who you truly are. And that sounds wonderful, right? When I say that, oh, that sounds wonderful until you experience.
Yes, of course. That's what I was about to tell you. That sounds wonderful.
But when you experience it,
Mm.
your third dimensional self dies, and it's painful. It's painful. So this is the razor's edge that these light beings walk, because on the one hand they see that in us,
Yeah.
and what they want more than anything is to come to us with all of their emotion, which if they did, we'd explode, because we can't tolerate that level of love. So they want so bad to connect with us. But they have to be careful, because
Yeah.
our tiny little egos will explode if they do. But they, when you get to that point, when you're open enough to listen to them, they will start they will worship you. They will start telling you how amazing you are. You're the creator of the universe. You're the God of this. You're the God of that. You live in this, and it just, and that's the exact opposite, by the way, of what the aliens do, right? They come and they strap you down and they cut you open, right? Gods don't
Have
do
you
that.
have you traveled to all the dimensions? Have you experienced you traveling to all the dimensions?
I honestly don't know. I'm gonna play it safe and say I don't think so. Because, and what I'll say
Mm.
is that um, it's just impossible to stay in the third dimensional form after you go to certain levels. It's just not possible. And so, as you know, a being showed up one day. This was here. I'll get into what I think is important. On my channel, twice a week we do these live guided meditations, and I take people through these meditations, and we
Yeah.
we go and we change the world.
Mm.
Um, the first time I did it, I was talking to a light being, and I had heard about this thing about, shift to 5D and this solar flash thing, and I got this dream that there was going to be something that everybody on Earth would experience that would shift things up. And I said, "What is that?" And I said, uh, "When is that going to happen?" And the being said, "When you decide." I went, "Oh, okay." So I went and I meditated, and I imagined myself going into the sun and sending solar energy of love to the earth and shifting up. And I did it live on my channel. I didn't think anything of it. And afterwards, light being showed up and they were so happy. Oh my God, you have no idea what you've just done. You're changing everything. And they were just so happy. And I was like, I, all I did was just guided meditation. And they said, no, you did much, much more than that. And I went, oh, okay. And then a couple of nights later, a being showed up and she said, you're going to get an upgrade, an energy upgrade. And I must have had a stupid look on my face because she said, say thank you. I went, okay, thank you. And then a couple minutes later,
Hmm.
this energy came into my room that was, I mean, like,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if I was going to hold together. My whole body was coming apart. And this
Shivering.
being said, uh, because of what I did, he said,
Hmm.
I'm going to give you a title. And he gave me this lofty title. And it hit me. The energy of that, just him speaking that hit me and my body, I was in bed for like weeks. I couldn't move because of the power of it. Because when they speak, they change entire timelines. They change entire realities because they are so connected. To speak something means that is going to be the truth. They have Vox City, like on a level we can't even begin to imagine.
Hmm.
So I think he must have been, I would guess maybe seventh dimension because he wasn't non-physical. I could tell that he was still physical, but very powerful. So I'm going to put him at like seventh dimension because it was hard for me to physically be in his presence.
Okay. How many dimensions are there in total? What is the highest one? Is it 11th or ninth? Because if I search on Google, sometimes Google says 7 and sometimes it say 9 or 11. So I'm always wondering what is the highest dimension?
I honestly don't know. My guess is I do feel like ninth is the highest you can go before you lose a physical body. And I do believe that there are dimensions above that. So I'm going to guess 12. If I had to guess, I would guess 12.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So just to give you an idea of, I don't know if this ever ends because one of the first things I experienced is uh, I was taken to a realm
Mm.
and there was this being of light like a sun goddess. And there's a
Mm.
whole story behind that. But she said, and she was one and the same with a masculine deity who was like darkness and energy, and she was all light. And so he was power and she was light or something like that. And they were the mother father, right? Saying Shiva Shakti.
Mm.
And she said, we are the gods that the gods worship. And I had never heard anything, that concept had never, I mean, we don't think like that. There's gods and humans. That's how we look at it. But that's not how it is. It's like there's deities, and then there's the deities that create the deities, and then there's the deities that create the I don't know how far it goes.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at old mythology, like the oldest mythologies on the planet, like for instance, the um, Sumerian mythology, they will talk about a deity they called Tiamat, who they call chaos. And then from her came the first gods, and then the second gods, and then the grandchildren of the first children of Tiamat. Those are the gods. And the same
Okay.
is true in Norse mythology. You have a being who's called a giant and then gives birth to the first god and then the second. So you have like the grandchildren, Odin and Thor and Freya. And so those deities, the ones we worship, are like the great grandchildren of the first gods.
Mm.
I don't know how much higher it goes. I can't.
Yes, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah. So, Mahadeva, tell us, how did you get this name? How did you choose this name? Did you choose this name or someone else gave you this name?
This name was given to me in a dream. This was about 20 years ago. At that time, I was involved in more 3D stuff. And a
Hmm.
woman that I knew who was a psychic, and I didn't really, she said, your guides are going to come to you tonight and they have some important information. And sure enough, as I was dreaming, this beautiful blonde haired woman, just her face showed up in front of mine, and she said, hello, Mahadeva. And then she left.
Oh, oh, okay.
Didn't know what that was. Um, but later on, when I got into Vedic astrology, I wanted to give myself a spiritual name. And as it turns out, my name Michael is very close. So
Hmm.
for my ascendant, the syllable ma is good because my ascendant is in Magha, and so ma is good, Michael is good. And I went, oh, I was given the name Mahadeva. Oh, I'll just take that one. So that's the one that I've used ever since. And it's important because, as you know, in uh, Indian culture, the kids are born based on their nakshatra, right? And they
Yes.
have, so, if you look at it and you see, oh, La is a good syllable, then you might name your daughter Lakshmi. So every
Hmm.
time you say, Lakshmi, come here, Lakshmi, close the door, Lakshmi, eat your vegetables, Lakshmi, I love you. Whenever you say the name, it hits some aspect of
Yes.
their planetary alignment, which gives them a blessing. So
Yes.
ideally, you give them one based on their moon, which makes their mind, their meditative mind. So they grow up with a good emotional and spiritual meditative balance because they've been called that. So when people
Hmm.
call me Mahadeva, what they're doing is they're actually empowering my ascendant, which is that Magha, that king, that power. And that's something that is important for me in this life. So, in case anybody wants a spiritual name, go find a Vedic astrologer and they'll help you with that.
Right. I'm just so much inspired by you, Mahadeva. I am thinking you're having lots of knowledge, man. Lots of knowledge. You know,
Thank you.
and when your spiritual guide came to your dream and gave you this name, Mahadeva, did you know who is Mahadeva? No?
I don't know if I'd heard it or not.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
No. Okay.
I could tell that it was a Vedic name. That was all I knew. But no, and interestingly enough, that has happened throughout. I told you about the sun deity who said, we're the gods that created the gods. And then
Hmm.
she went on to say that I was her son and she created me and a bunch of other
Oh,
things I can get into. And so I went and looked up what I thought was her name and I started calling her by this. And one time she very kindly, she's a mother, she was
mhm.
very kind. And at the end of our discussion, and I said, and I called her by whatever name I thought she was, she very kindly said, Ilah. I never heard that name before, Ilah. So I went and looked it up. It is a Vedic sun goddess.
Oh,
Yeah, very, very, very hard to find Vedic sun goddess. But I went, oh. And it turns out she, in fact, is the mother of the gods who created the, it's like you can't make this stuff up.
yeah. Nice. Very nice, Mahadeva. And then now, today, on 3rd of November 2024, 4:48 p.m. EST, what do you think? Who is Mahadeva? Did you do any research on this?
Oh,
Who
yeah.
is
Of
Mahadeva?
course.
Who is Mahadeva
Mahadeva.
or Shiva? Yeah.
Yeah. Mahadeva is one of the names for Shiva. And according, of course, Hinduism, there's a lot of different opinions in that.
Yes.
It's not even really a religion, it's just sort of an umbrella for different paths. But Mahadeva is when you have all three aspects. You have the creator, the sustainer, and the destroyer. And he is the great God, Mahadeva. So Maha is in English is mighty. It comes from the same root, Magh. And so Mahadeva is great light. Deva means deity, it means God, but it also means light.
Yes.
So he's the great light. And when you worship Mahadeva, you are worshiping the fullness. If you worship Vishnu, you're worshiping the part of him that maintains and keeps the third dimension safe. We don't
Mm-hmm.
worship Brahma anymore, but when you did, it was because you wanted power to create. We've gone beyond that, so we don't worship Brahma anymore. When you worship Shiva, he's called the destroyer. And interesting, the god Odin
Mm.
in Norse mythology, he has this one of the same names as Shiva, which is
Oh,
um,
I heard that.
yeah,
I heard that.
Ugra.
I have yeah, yeah, yeah. I have seen the trident even, the trident.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So Ugra means frightening, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Hmm.
in English, ugly, uglice means, it used to mean
Yeah.
frightening. Now it means unattractive, but ugly used to mean, used to frighten you. So, and Odin is called the fierce god, and he's called the crazy god.
Hmm.
But when you find out what it means, wod, which I don't know if this is true, but I know like in some places in India they'll go wow, right? And it's not
Mm-hmm.
just wow, it's like oh, it's like wow, wow. And so we had a word which we don't use anymore called wod, and it means shamanic fury. So when you see Odin and he's furious, what's really happening is that he is in the bliss of his spiritual ecstasy. And what we're seeing is from our third dimensional eyes, we're seeing a light that is too bright and it frightens us. But
Mm-hmm.
when you see him from a higher perspective, he's in bliss. Same thing with Kali, right? Kali, people call Kali the goddess of death and all kinds of ridiculous things. And
Yes.
she's frightening to look at. Her tongue is hanging out, there's blood coming out, and people. But what they don't realize is that that's because she is devouring the demons within us.
Yes.
And the blood is coming down as she's desperately trying to save her children. And she's filled with rage at anything that would come to harm us. So
Yes.
if you see Kali come to you and she has blood coming out of her mouth and she frightens you, it means you have unresolved wounds. But when you resolve them, she turns into the most beautiful young woman you could ever see.
Mm-hmm.
So it all depends on your perspectives. Shiva
Yeah.
is the destroyer only if there's something in you that needs to be destroyed. And if you become like him, then you'll see him as he is, the most peaceful, he just the most peaceful, immovable, brilliant, beautiful, and the great. That's why they call him the greatest of the gods, at least some people, right?
Thank you so much for giving insight. Lots of knowledge you are carrying. I really appreciate that. I'm damn sure this knowledge is not one in one night, one day, one year even. This is study of research of lots of your hard work and your Mahadeva. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. Really appreciate.
My privilege. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
I always watch your channel because you have lots of interesting videos over there. One video is Nagas, right?
Nagas.
Nagas are coming to this earth to help the humanity. What is that? Who are those?
That here's what I know about that. Of course, we know from the Vedic teachings that Nagas are very powerful beings, and they have their own world called
Hmm.
Nagaloka. And I hadn't learned a whole lot about this, but my work with the light beings, they took me down, and they
Yeah.
took me to a place down below the earth, and it was in this cave, and there were all of these beautiful gemstones, and there were these like neon looking cobra beings, and these were the nagas.
Hmm.
And So I'm going to share with you how the light beings talk to me. They talk to me as though I am Mahadev. So I know I'm a third dimensional person talking to you right now. They
Mm-hmm.
talk to me like I'm Mahadev. And they're trying, like they're awakening me. This is who you are. You don't remember. So this is who you
Mm-hmm.
are. And so these Nagas showed up and they said the everything, all of the dimensions, the entire multiverse is an egg. At the bottom of the egg is Nagaloka. And this is where all of the different karmic lines come together, all the different, what we would call timelines. They all come together and merge at the bottom of the egg, which is Nagaloka. That's why if you go above Nagaloka, you'll be in hell, which is weird. You go until you get to the third and above. But if you go
Mm-hmm.
lower than the third on the way down, if you stop, you'll be in a hell. It'll be a horrible place because all of that, the lower vibrational karmic lines are coming together. But once it comes down together at the bottom, it's a very peaceful place. They can like pull on the strings to change reality in all of the dimensions, even the gods themselves will have to move if they pull on one of the. So we could say they're more powerful than anybody. So they said we are at the bottom, and then they said you are at the top, and then went all the way up to the top of the egg, where all of the dimensions come together, and that's where Shiva sits, right on top of Mount Kailash.
Oh.
And they said you sit up here, and they said we're
Mm-hmm.
down here, and they said you are the only being who can tell us what to do. If you tell us what to do, what happens, we'll do it. This is the power that you have. Everybody else, we can pull on these strings and they're going to have to dance to our tune. And what they do is their function is they want everybody to evolve. So first thing you might think was, well, that's horrible. Why would they do that to us? They have all this power, but they're looking at everybody's evolution. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
very emotional as I talk about it. They're looking at everybody's evolution and they're saying, man, that person right there is really stuck. And
Are you
we,
getting emotion? Are you getting
yeah,
emotional? Oh
yeah, it
my God.
makes me very emotional.
Oh my
And
God.
they say, that person's stuck.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't move, they're going to be in that place for a long time. So they pull on a karmic string. That person will go down and hit a problem. They'll
Mm-hmm.
have an incarnation that will be very challenging for them, but they'll have an awakening and then they'll shift up. And even the gods themselves have to go through their knowledge, and the Nagas pull on that. They're so incredibly powerful. Now that's one level.
Mm-hmm.
The second level is, and this is important to know, there's no one anything. There's levels of everything. So if Nagas exist down there, they're going to exist in other ways. On our planet, there are cobras and snakes. That's one representation of them. And if you've ever looked into the eyes of a cobra, you know that that's not a normal animal. There's something else going on with that. Just like if you look into the eyes of a wolf, that's not a normal animal. Something else is going on there. But there is a planet where, and this is according to Sri Yukteswar, he talks about this. There's a planet that is inhabited by uh, beings that are cobras, like 7 foot tall cobras. And they
Mm-hmm.
have the ability to shapeshift. They can turn into humans or turn into cobras. And
That
they
was my
came,
that was my next question about the shape
yeah,
shifting. Yes, please. Yes, please.
yeah, so they came to this earth and they taught us Kundalini yoga. They taught us mantra. They taught us all this. And this was at a time, and now I understand now that, times in like Satya Yuga, things were very different and all kinds of different beings could,
Yeah.
interact. And so they taught us about the chakras and they taught us about Kundalini and all that. And then it became frightening to humans. So they chased them off. That's why we have this knowledge, but those beings aren't physically here anymore. But everything's changing now. Everybody's coming back, and
Yes.
everybody's showing back up. The Nagas are showing up again. They're all showing up, and it's because we're shifting up. We're now in Dwapara Yuga, and we're making our way up towards to Satya Yuga again. But yeah, that's my anyway. Nagas are very close to me, so it makes me very emotional.
Thank you so much. If we talk about the scientists, they are doing lots of research on so many different things. Also, they are doing research on aliens. For example, they go to Area 51 to sense or feel that energy. Is there any way you can help the scientist? Because you are a star family.
Well,
Yeah.
again, well, there's a place called I forget what it's called.
Area 51?
Not Area 51. It's some other place that people talk about a lot that's connected to aliens. So we have to understand a couple of things.
Hmm.
One is there are places just beneath well, there are places on Earth that have a convergence of different vortexes where you can experience multiple dimensions at once.
Mm-hmm.
So in those places, you will see things like Bigfoot, and you will see ETs, and you will see, wolfmen, and you'll see all kinds of crazy stuff. But that's because there's like different dimensions sort of coming together, both positive and negative. So I don't want to put too much of this into your video, but I'm just going to say that there are people on this world that are extremely dark, and they use this knowledge, and they've been
Mm-hmm.
using it for thousands of years to control and make themselves rich. I'll just stop right there. These are the people who are behind alien
Oh.
abductions. These are the people behind that. So Area 50, Area 51 is, well,
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this. People should go and look at Dr. Stephen Greer's websites. STEVENGREER. And he has all kinds of documents about what's happening on these black projects.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to talk about it. Number one, that's not my job. Number two, there's no reason to put a bullseye on your, on your
Mm-hmm.
video. But
Yeah.
those places, I would recommend everybody stay away from for all kinds of reasons.
Yeah. Right. Better to increase your spiritual level up to understand it better. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that, you know, the like, here's something that's important to understand,
Yeah.
which is we all understand intuitively. These beings, I call them light beings. You can call them extraterrestrials. You can call them gods. It's just different levels of consciousness. And the
Hmm.
idea that, the gods need to go and talk to some government authority is ridiculous. We wouldn't say, why would Shiva or Odin or Thor or Lakshmi, they're not going to go to the government. They're going to come straight to us. These
Mm-hmm.
beings are going to do the same. They come straight to us because we are their
Oh.
family. We're part of it.
Hmm.
So we don't need to
Hmm.
worry about
Hmm.
any of that stuff if we don't want.
Nice idea. Good. Like we are talking about shape shifting, in the same way, there is shifting timelines. Is that traveling in the time, traveling in the past or future? Is is that the same concept?
Well, I'm pausing because there's a lot of information. So, um, on the one hand, the idea of timelines is a very useful idea.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's completely accurate, but it's a good idea because if we talk about it that way, it makes sense, and we can have those discussions, and it's helpful. Um, we can go backwards and forwards in time. I've done it, not in my physical body, but I have done it. But it gets weird. Now it's going to get weird. So think of time as a circle. right?
Mm.
It's not a straight line. We think of it as a straight line. But imagine if it's a circle and we're traveling around a circle, we see it as a line, right? But if you stop here and go opposite that, I mean, um, so that's one thing. But here's the craziest part. I'll just tell you the story. So when I was about 20 years ago, I was doing Kundalini meditation. I was also doing some very powerful Taoist stuff, and the energies were conflicting, and I was having all kinds of energy sickness.
Mm.
And I didn't have any teacher to help me. So I just meditated and I said, if there's anybody out there, I didn't know anything about light beings, or I didn't know about any of that. If there's anybody out there, please give me a seed sound meditation so I can balance my energy. And I was immediately given the Huul breath, Huul, and I teach that on my channel. And it's similar to the earth breath, and it's similar to the seed sounds like Hong. So we're all it's a descending power. We can all figure that no matter what path we're on. And then the L sound in the runes is deep waters. So it takes you deep into the waters of your emotions, deep into the earth, and it grounds you. I tried it out. It fixed me instantaneously. I went, well, I'm going to start teaching this. All right. So I find out later that one of the first names for the earth goddess in Europe is Hul. We call her Hulda now. In fact, in Germany to this day, people,
Mm.
when it snows, people will say, Mother Hulda is shaking out her bedspread. But
Oh.
they still remember that, even though it's thousands of years old. I had this feeling when I first got it, I had this vision of people in a cave, thousands, tens of thousands of years ago, chanting this. And I was like, wow, what is that? All right, so that's the backstory. So one day here, as we're talking about Nagas, I knew that a light being was going to come. I was going to have some kind of connection. And as I came across to my house, a snake went right in front of the door underneath the plant, and I knew the Nagas were saying, go in there and meditate right now. So I said, and I went and I started meditating and I started doing the Hul mantra.
Mm.
And what ended up happening was that I was taken back in time, 30,000 years to this cave. And I could tell you about this cave. It still exists. It had been blocked from human, the cave had blocked itself off for 20,000 years, and it's now opened up in the last 10,000. And it's got all of these old paintings and pictures. It's phenomenal. I think it's Lascaux cave, Lascaux in France. Anyway, I was taken back. I don't know if it was that cave, it was another cave like that, and there were people in there and they were chanting. As I'm talking, I can feel their energy.
Mm.
And instead of them teaching me, right, because
Mm.
this is what you would think, linear time, they're going to teach me their mantra of Hul, the earth goddess, right? That's not what
Mm.
happened. I started chanting, and I was in that cave on the other side of the fire, and they were learning from me. And then what I was told is, you have just changed the time, the present time, by going back and doing that. So if you want to talk about a timeline, went from one timeline to another, but it's not like that. Everything we do now affects them, and everything they do affects us. And so still to this day, when in my meditations, if I feel their energy, I will take us back to that cave and I will chant for them because they're our ancestors. And if we feed them, they will shift. And guess what happens? The present changes because the people become different.
So you traveled many years back. This term is called past life regression.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you were actually able to do something better for them.
For us too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
they were learning from me. And I was like, I don't understand how this works.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm 30,000 years in the future. How is it that I'm teaching you the thing that I just, and this is what.
Maybe maybe you are from other star family and you are on this earth to do some betterment or change or to teach us some new technology
Hmm,
to raise our frequency.
yeah,
So,
well,
have you ever seen your past lives? Were you born here on this earth or were you born on other planets?
um, I don't have access to memories of other planets as of now. I'm learning more memories of my past life here. I do
Hmm.
remember one of my earliest lives as a Neanderthal. It was very tragic, but I remember that. I remember a life as a French swordsman. He was a horrible guy,
Oh.
very horrible guy. He was
Uh,
in, yeah. And then most recently, it gets crazy. I am actually, I didn't remember this by myself. Some Pleiadians showed up. I know it sounds so hokey and but that's who they said they were. Pleiadians showed up and they said, do you remember when you first met us? And then they told me that I was once king of Atlantis.
hmm.
And the whole tragedy happened as a result of that. But so that is something I'm starting to relive. And that's been very crazy and weird. Now, having said that, uh, there's things that I've done in meditation and live meditations when I go off and I do stuff, it gets the attention of high level, higher dimensional beings. And I believe it's very possible that one showed up and changed my past. Talked to me in the present, which went back and changed three different experiences that I remember as supernatural experiences in my early adulthood and childhood. But if I take the interpretation of it, it actually happened now, and it flowed back into time and then changed me, which now changes my present. This is what I mean.
Hmm.
You start talking about time, it gets just, we can't get our third dimensional understanding around it. But the power behind that, here's the miraculous power behind it. If we are able to get to some of these core issues,
Hmm.
we can change our past. If we change our past, we change our future, we change our present.
No way. We can't change our past. I can't change my past. No way.
Don't think so?
No.
What if you could? What if you could go back and change something in your past?
Please tell me how. If I killed someone, can I just make that person alive? No.
I don't know. I I will. What? Okay. So what you could do, without a doubt, what you could do is you could learn a very powerful way to balance that, shit. What about this? Let's just take a little bit of a
Yeah.
mental trip for a moment.
Okay.
So in my past life
Hmm.
in Atlantis, apparently I
Hmm.
made a big mistake, and I
Hmm.
and I did some damage to the planet. And in
Hmm.
fact, it makes me weep when I think about it. The meditations that we're doing on my channel, the live meditations, the light beings are saying you change that.
Hmm.
That's no longer happened in the past. I remember it, but we have a thing now, if you look it up, called the Mandela effect, where we have things that people remember completely differently. Like I remember uh, President Kennedy's assassination completely differently than the actual video of it, the film of it. I remember that's not how it happened.
Hmm.
So who's right or who's wrong? I mean, I know I didn't misremember it. So the past somehow changed. And so we're in this state now where we're shifting.
Hmm.
We're really, the truth is, we're in a holding program. the third dimension has been deleted. This is the thing is hard to wrap our minds around. We are in this temporary video game program that's acting like the third dimension as we're shifting to the fifth dimension. And so the past is changing all over the place.
Oh.
So I have the ability when we do these meditations, I can go into the past and change the things that I messed up first time around. And it's real. It's like everything shifts. The world shifts, consciousness shifts, everything shifts. So yeah, I think you can go back in time and change that. I do think
You mean you, are you talking about imagination? Let's say if I did something wrong with a person, I hurted a person or something, then I can imagine that if I could have done Y instead of X, if I would have been a nicer person to this person. Is that you're talking about, like changing the feelings
that
and feeling?
that would
Yeah.
be one way to do it. What I would suggest is to go into meditation and go back in time, go back to the memory, because the fact that you remember it means it's still replaying, like literally replaying in the past. It's still happening over and over again, because otherwise you wouldn't be thinking about it. So
Mm.
you go back in the past, and this time you talk to the soul of the person. Like if what it is, I hurt somebody and I want to fix it. You go and talk to their soul. So that's important. It's not you're talking to the third dimensional person, because they're going to have their third dimensional thing. They're going to do their thing like a ghost. They're going to do their thing. If you ask the soul, I want to talk to the soul of that person, the soul will come up. And you imagine whatever it is, apologizing, changing, healing, give them something. The one thing that I've learned is that in meditation, your imaginations are real. It is more real. What you imagine in meditation is more real than this physical reality. And here's the part that's going to bake your mind.
Mm.
If you do that, like if you with deep intention, I'm going to go back to when I was 10 years old and I push that kid down the stairs, and I go back and I bring him up to my mind and I say, I want to
Mm.
talk to his soul. And I say, I want to help you now. How can I help get rid of this? How can I shift this karma? Whatever it is, work something out with him. Imagine spending 10 years with that person. Imagine taking care of them, loving them, helping them, whatever it is, whatever balances it within you. Imagine that. Here's what could happen, and you'd never know it.
Mm.
That timeline could completely change. The present could completely change, and you'd never remember it. You'd never remember it.
I think I'm getting some logic, whatever you are saying. When you say changing past, that is nothing but balancing energy. If someone is having bad feeling about you or vice versa, then that energy may appear in current life to balance the karma. That's how we change our past.
There you go.
Very
Yeah,
good.
that, I couldn't
Nice
have said it
logic.
better. Yeah. Yeah, the only
I
thing
think.
that matters is our intention. Intention combined with our actions. It's the
Mhm.
only thing that matters in this world. Only thing. If we if we have clear intentions and we take actions, whether that's meditative or physical, that's the only thing that the universe cares about.
I would like to say a big, big, big thank you to you, Mahadeva, that you have given us lots of your knowledge and lots of your time. And this knowledge, again, is many years of your hard work. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge in this podcast. Do you have any message for our viewers, young generations, and all our soul family?
I think
Yes.
I've said a lot.
Mhm.
The only, the message that I want to give people is I want to help them awaken to the knowledge and the experience that they are God. And if they want to do the meditation earlier in the video of me talking about leaving my body and going to God, if you do that in meditation, ask that light anything you want and watch what happens. And if you can say on a daily, we have mantras, Shivoham. The mantra is, I
Shivoham.
am Shiva. I mean, mantras are telling you you're God. That's not
Yeah.
just me talking. I mean, Shiva says that. Imagine that. The supreme God of the universe says, oh, you want a mantra? Say that you're me. Who says that? The most humble being in the universe says that, who's also
Mhm.
the most powerful. So that's my
Oh,
message. You are God.
so so you are that quote, you are God is being derived from that Shivoham, Shivoham. We are God, we are God. Shivoham, we are God.
Yeah. Yeah. Believe it. It's not just the words.
Yes.
Say, I am Shiva. Shivoham. Shivoham. Nothing can survive that. Your pain can't survive that. What damage you've done can't survive that. Damage against you, somebody says, I hate your guts, I want you to die. You say, Shivoham. I'm Shiva. Imagine Shiva. Somebody says to Shiva, I hate you, I want you to die. He's going to, Shivoham. Not gonna, just nothing. That's who we are. That's who all of us are. We just have to decide. And never before in the
Hmm.
history of the entire multiverse, never before have we had the ability to decide to become gods like we do right
Yes, right. Thank you so much again. Have a great day
now.
ahead.
My absolute privilege.